Officer Ryan Carter had responded to hundreds of emergency calls during his 15 years with the Pine Creek Police Department, drunk drivers, domestic disputes, missing hikers, even a mountain lion wandering into a neighborhood. But nothing in his career prepared him for the tiny German Shepherd puppy that refused to leave him alone. At first, Ryan thought it was just another stray. 5 minutes later, he realized the puppy wasn't following him by accident. 10 minutes later, he understood the little dog was trying to save someone's life, and before the sun went down, Ryan would find himself chasing a mystery that would expose a nightmare hidden deep inside Black Pine Forest. The morning air smelled of fresh pine and wet asphalt. After a night of summer rain, Ryan leaned against his patrol SUV outside a small coffee shop, enjoying the only peaceful moment he expected to have all day. Pine Creek was usually quiet, the kind of mountain town where everyone knew each other's names. Children rode bicycles without fear. Store owners left flowers outside their doors. People waved whenever they saw a police cruiser. Ryan liked it that way. After 15 years in law enforcement, he had seen enough darkness to appreciate peaceful mornings. He raised the coffee cup to his lips. Then he heard it. A tiny whimper. Soft, weak, almost impossible to notice. Ryan lowered the cup and looked around. Nothing. The parking lot was nearly empty. A delivery truck rolled past. An elderly couple crossed the street. The sound came again. This time closer. He looked down. Standing beside his boot was the smallest German Shepherd puppy Ryan had ever seen. Its oversized ears hadn't fully stood up yet. Its paws looked far too big for its tiny body. The puppy's fur was dirty and soaked with mud. One front paw trembled as if it had been running for hours. Ryan crouched instinctively. "Well?" He smiled faintly. "Where did you come from, little guy?" The puppy didn't bark. It simply stared into his eyes. Ryan noticed something strange. Most lost puppies wagged their tails the moment someone spoke kindly to them. This one didn't. Its tail stayed low. Its body shook, not from cold, from fear. Ryan glanced around the street. No owner, no leash, no collar, no one calling its name. The puppy took one hesitant step forward. Then another. Finally, it gently pressed its nose against Ryan's boot. Ryan sighed. Looks like animal control is getting another call. He reached for his radio. The instant he did, the puppy suddenly grabbed the cuff of his pant leg with its tiny teeth. Not hard enough to hurt, just enough to stop him. Ryan froze. "What are you doing?" The puppy tugged once, then released him. It walked 3 steps away, stopped, turned around, and looked directly at him, waiting. Ryan chuckled. "You want me to follow you." The puppy gave a tiny bark, then took another few steps. Again it stopped. Again it looked back. Ryan had seen trained police dogs communicate like that. Search and rescue dogs often paused to make sure their handlers were still behind them. But this puppy couldn't have been more than 3 months old. There was no way. "Coincidence," Ryan muttered. He turned toward his patrol vehicle instead. The puppy let out a heartbreaking cry. It ran after him as fast as its tiny legs could carry it, slipping on the wet pavement before crashing into Ryan's boot. The little body trembled violently. Ryan frowned. Something wasn't right. He bent down and examined the puppy more carefully. Scratches covered its legs. Small cuts marked its paws. Its fur was tangled with leaves, pine needles, and dried mud. This wasn't a puppy that had wandered out of someone's backyard. It looked like it had survived the forest. Ryan gently checked its shoulders. The puppy flinched. Someone had heard it. His expression changed immediately. "Who did this to you?" The puppy whimpered again, then looked toward the distant mountains rising behind Pine Creek, Black Pine Forest. Without warning, it grabbed Ryan's pant leg once more. This time, the tug was stronger, more desperate. Ryan followed its gaze. Miles of dense forest stretched across the horizon. The same forest where hikers occasionally disappeared, where abandoned logging roads twisted through endless trees, where cell phone signals vanished within minutes. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He looked back at the puppy. Its dark eyes were filled with something he couldn't explain. Not hunger, not loneliness. Urgency. Pure urgency. Ryan stood silently for several seconds. Finally, he pulled a dog biscuit from the emergency pet kit stored inside his cruiser. He held it out. The puppy sniffed it and turned away. Ryan blinked. The little dog ignored the food completely. Instead, it walked back toward the road leading to the forest. It stopped once more, looked over its shoulder, and waited. Ryan slowly slipped the biscuit back into his pocket. No starving puppy refuses food. He whispered the words more to himself than anyone else. Whatever this little animal wanted, it mattered more than eating. Ryan reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Carter." The dispatcher answered immediately. "Go ahead." Ryan kept staring at the puppy. "I might have a stray dog situation." He paused, then slowly added, "or something a lot bigger." At that exact moment, the puppy suddenly bolted across the road toward the entrance of Black Pine Forest. Without thinking, Ryan ran after it. Ryan barely noticed the traffic as he sprinted after the puppy. Cars honked while the tiny German Shepherd slipped through a narrow gap in the roadside guardrail and disappeared onto a dirt trail leading into Black Pine Forest. "Hey, slow down." The puppy glanced back for only a second before continuing deeper into the trees. Ryan stopped long enough to radio dispatch. "Dispatch, I'm checking a possible abandoned animal near Black Pine Forest." There was a brief pause. "You need backup?" Ryan looked at the puppy waiting 20 yards ahead. "Negative. I'll advise if anything changes." He clipped the radio back onto his vest and followed. The forest swallowed the sounds of town almost immediately. Tall pines blocked the morning sunlight, leaving only narrow beams of light across the ground. The puppy never wandered aimlessly. Every 30 or 40 feet it stopped, looked back, and waited until Ryan caught up. Only then did it continue. It was almost leading him. Ryan had worked with K-9 units before. This behavior was too deliberate for a puppy barely old enough to leave its mother. After 10 minutes of hiking, the puppy suddenly veered off the trail. Ryan frowned. There isn't even a path. Branches scraped against his uniform as he pushed through thick bushes. Then the puppy stopped. It lowered its nose to the ground and pawed at a pile of leaves. Ryan knelt beside it. Hidden beneath the leaves was a silver necklace. The chain had snapped cleanly in half. A tiny heart-shaped pendant dangled from one end. Inside the pendant was a photograph. A smiling young woman, and the very same puppy sitting in her lap. Ryan's expression hardened. "So, you belong to her," the puppy whimpered softly and nudged the necklace with its nose. Ryan carefully slipped it into an evidence bag from his patrol kit. This didn't get here by accident. The puppy immediately started moving again. This time it walked faster. Much faster. Ryan struggled to keep up over fallen logs and loose rocks. The little dog suddenly froze. Its ears lifted. Its entire body became rigid. Ryan instinctively reached for his service weapon. What is it, silence? Then, a faint sound drifted through the trees. Not an animal, a human voice. So weak, it was almost impossible to hear. Ryan held his breath. Nothing. The sound disappeared. Hello. No answer. Only wind moving through the branches. The puppy barked once and rushed downhill. A bit followed. At the bottom of the slope, he noticed something unusual. Fresh tire tracks. Large off-road tires. They hadn't been there long. Rain had fallen during the night, yet the impressions remained sharp. Someone had driven into the forest only a few hours earlier. "No public road comes through here," Ryan whispered. The puppy began sniffing along the tracks until it reached another object hidden beneath broken branches. A cell phone. The screen was shattered. Mud covered almost every inch of it. Ryan picked it up carefully. The battery was dead, but taped to the back was a small handwritten note. Only 3 words. "Help me, please." Ryan's heartbeat quickened. This was no missing pet. Someone had left clues. Someone wanted to be found. He looked toward the puppy. The little dog stared into the forest with desperate eyes. "You've been trying to show someone all this." The puppy gave a tiny bark. Ryan immediately radioed dispatch. "Dispatch, this is Carter." His voice had completely changed. "I've located possible evidence connected to a missing person." The dispatcher responded instantly. "Do you require additional units?" Ryan looked at the tire tracks disappearing deeper into black pine forest. "Yes." He hesitated. "Send detectives search and rescue and crime scene." "Understood." "Stay where you are." Ryan glanced at the puppy again. "I don't think we have that kind of time." Before dispatch could answer, the puppy suddenly started barking wildly. Not at Ryan, not at the trail, at the woods behind him. Ryan spun around. A branch snapped, then another. Someone else was in the forest, watching them. Ryan drew his service weapon and aimed toward the trees. The forest fell completely silent. Only the puppy's low growl broke the stillness. "Police," Ryan shouted. "Come out with your hands where I can see them." No response. Another branch cracked somewhere to his left. Ryan slowly stepped sideways, trying to widen his view between the pines. Nothing. Just shadows. The puppy remained frozen, staring into the same patch of woods. Its ears stood straight and every muscle in its tiny body was tense. Then without warning, it bolted. Buddy Ryan ran after it, before losing sight of the small dog among the trees. The puppy raced through thick brush, crossed a narrow creek, and finally stopped behind a massive fallen pine. It began barking frantically at the ground. Ryan crouched beside it. There were footprints, fresh ones, heavy hiking boots. At least 3 different people. The prints were pressed deep into the damp soil, all moving in the same direction. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Someone had been here recently, very recently. He followed the trail another 20 yards before noticing something hanging from a broken branch. A strip of blue fabric. He carefully removed it. The material matched the color of the jacket worn by the woman in the photograph inside the broken necklace. "Emily," he whispered, after reading the name printed on a faded luggage tag sewn inside the fabric. At least now she had a name. The puppy whimpered softly, then continued forward. Ryan's radio suddenly crackled. "Carter, this is dispatch. Detective Sarah Collins and additional units are 10 minutes away. What's your status?" Ryan kept his eyes on the footprints. "I've confirmed signs of recent activity." He paused. "I believe our missing person is named Emily." "Copy that. Hold your position until backup arrives." Ryan looked at the puppy. It had already started walking again. Slowly, carefully, as if it knew they were getting close. "I can't. What I said, I can't wait." Before dispatch could answer, the signal dissolved into static. The forest had swallowed the radio transmission. Ryan clipped it back onto his vest. No signal. The puppy suddenly stopped beside a cluster of bushes. Its nose twitched rapidly. Then it scratched at the ground. Ryan pushed the branches aside. His stomach tightened. A backpack. The shoulder strap had been ripped almost completely off. Inside were scattered personal items. A water bottle. A flashlight. A small notebook, soaked by rain. Most importantly, a driver's license. Emily Brooks, 26 years old. Pine Creek resident. Ryan quickly searched the remaining pockets. No wallet, no phone, no car keys. Whoever had taken Emily had removed anything valuable, except one folded page hidden inside the notebook. Ryan carefully unfolded it. Instead of writing, there was a hand-drawn map. It showed a section of black pine forest. Near the center, someone had circled an area in red ink. Beside it were 2 words. Old Cabin Ryan studied the map. He knew this forest well. There had once been an abandoned ranger station deep inside these woods. It had burned down years ago. At least, that's what everyone believed. The puppy barked again, louder this time. Ryan slipped the map into his pocket. "If that's where they took her..." He didn't finish the sentence. A sudden sound echoed through the trees. An engine, low, powerful, Ryan immediately pulled the puppy behind a fallen log. A black pickup truck rolled slowly along an old logging road, less than 50 yards away. The windows were tinted, no license plate. It moved at walking speed, almost as if searching for something. Ryan stayed perfectly still. The truck stopped, the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out wearing a dark jacket and baseball cap. He scanned the forest carefully. Then he spoke into a handheld radio. "We've got a problem." Ryan couldn't hear the reply. The man continued, "Someone's been here." He looked directly toward the broken branches Ryan had just crossed. They found the trail. Ryan's heartbeat accelerated. The puppy pressed tightly against his leg, but remained completely silent. The man reached into the truck and pulled out a hunting rifle. "We split up," he said into the radio. "Find the dog first." Ryan felt every muscle in his body tense. They weren't just hunting Emily anymore. Now, they were hunting the only witness that had managed to escape. Ryan remained perfectly still behind the fallen log. The man with the hunting rifle scanned the trees only 30 yards away. One careless movement would give away their position. Beside Ryan, the puppy trembled, but made no sound. Somehow it seemed to understand exactly what was happening. The man spoke into his radio again. "I'll search east. You check the creek," a distorted voice answered. "And if you find the cop—" The man smiled. "He won't leave this forest." Ryan's grip tightened around his pistol. This was no ordinary kidnapping. These men were organized, armed, and completely unafraid of killing a police officer. The truck slowly disappeared down the logging road while the gunman vanished between the trees. Ryan waited another full minute before moving. He looked at the puppy. "Good job." The little dog immediately stood and walked toward the direction the truck had gone. "No," Ryan gently stopped him. "We're not chasing them." Instead, he unfolded Emily's map once more. The red circle marked a location less than a mile away. If the old ranger cabin still existed, it was their best chance of finding Emily before the kidnappers returned. "Let's go." The hike became more difficult with every step. The forest grew darker, thicker. Branches blocked the sunlight, and enormous pines towered overhead like silent guards. Ryan checked his GPS. No signal. His phone displayed the same message. "No service." The puppy suddenly slowed. Its nose stayed close to the ground. Every few feet it stopped to sniff before continuing. Ryan trusted its instincts. About 20 minutes later, the smell reached him. Smoke! Fresh smoke. Someone had recently lit a fire. Ryan crouched immediately. The puppy looked back, ears raised. "You smell it too." The little dog gave a quick nod of its head before moving even more cautiously. Another 100 yards. Then Ryan saw it. Hidden behind thick trees stood a weathered wooden cabin. Its roof sagged with age. Several windows were boarded shut. From a distance, it looked abandoned. But one detail caught Ryan's attention. Thin, gray smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was inside. Ryan quietly moved behind a large boulder and studied the building. No vehicles, no movement, no voices, just silence, too much silence. He raised his binoculars. Fresh tire marks surrounded the cabin. Someone had been using this place regularly. His radio suddenly buzzed. "Static!" Then Detective Sarah Collins' voice finally broke through. "Ryan, do you copy?" He answered in a whisper. "Carter here." "We've reached the forest entrance. Your GPS stopped moving. I'm near a structure." What kind of structure? Ryan kept watching the cabin. "An old ranger cabin." There was a pause. "That's impossible." "What do you mean?" Sarah answered immediately. "The ranger station burned down 12 years ago." Ryan looked at the building again. It didn't. The puppy suddenly became restless. It circled Ryan twice before staring toward the back of the cabin. Its tail remained low. Then it quietly walked around the side of the building. Ryan followed. Behind the cabin stood an old woodshed. The puppy stopped beside it and scratched frantically at the ground. Ryan knelt. The soil had been disturbed recently. He brushed away loose dirt with his hand. His fingers touched metal. He pulled. A small flash drive emerged from the ground inside a waterproof plastic bag. Ryan frowned. Someone had hidden it deliberately. He connected it to his phone using the emergency adapter he carried in his patrol kit. One video file appeared. No title, no date. He pressed play. The shaky recording lasted less than 30 seconds. Emily was clearly filming from behind a group of trees. The camera zoomed toward several men unloading frightened young women from the back of a white cargo truck. Their hands were tied, their mouths covered. Ryan's blood ran cold. Human trafficking. Then the camera shifted. One of the men looked directly toward Emily. His face filled the screen. "Who's there?" Emily gasped. The recording ended with screaming. Ryan stared at the frozen image. Now everything made sense. Emily hadn't been kidnapped because of a robbery. She had witnessed something she was never supposed to see. The puppy whimpered softly. Ryan looked toward the cabin again. If Emily had hidden the flash drive, she must have escaped long enough to bury the evidence, which meant she had probably been held nearby at that exact moment. A woman's terrified scream echoed from somewhere beneath the cabin. Ryan froze. The scream came again, weak, terrified. It wasn't Emily's voice alone. There was more than one woman beneath the cabin. The puppy's ears shot upright. Without barking, it rushed toward the back porch and stopped beside a rusted metal hatch hidden beneath a pile of old firewood. Ryan knelt beside it. A heavy chain secured the hatch, but the padlock hung open. Someone had gone inside recently. He drew his pistol. "Stay behind me." The puppy ignored the order. It squeezed through a narrow gap beside the hatch and disappeared into the darkness. Buddy Ryan lifted the hatch carefully. A damp wooden staircase descended into a basement. The smell hit him immediately. Mold, diesel fuel, and something else. Fear. He switched on his flashlight and moved down one slow step at a time. The basement was much larger than he expected. Old shelves lined the walls filled with empty food cans, blankets, bottled water, and plastic containers. This wasn't an abandoned cabin. Someone had been living and hiding people here for months. A faint whimper echoed from behind a locked steel door. Ryan approached quietly. The puppy was already scratching at the bottom of the door. "It's okay," Ryan whispered. "I'm a police officer." Silence. Then a frightened female voice answered. "Please, they'll come back." Ryan tried the handle. Locked. He stepped back and kicked the door beside the lock. Once. Twice. On the third kick, the frame cracked open. Inside sat 3 terrified young women. Their hands were bound with zip ties. Their faces turned pale the moment they saw Ryan's uniform. One of them burst into tears. "Oh my God, you found us." Ryan quickly cut the restraints with his pocket knife. "My name is Officer Ryan Carter. Are any of you injured?" A woman with dark hair nodded. "My ankle. The others are okay." Ryan looked around. "Where's Emily Brooks?" The 3 exchanged nervous glances. Finally another woman spoke. "They took her. When, this morning, where, I don't know." They argued upstairs. One man kept saying she saw too much. Ryan's jaw tightened. Emily was still alive. But they had moved her. How many men? 5, maybe 6, and they all have guns. Ryan reached for his radio. Nothing. Still no signal. The basement blocked every transmission. He looked toward the staircase. "We have to leave." Before anyone could move, the puppy suddenly growled. Low, warning. Ryan immediately switched off his flashlight. Heavy footsteps echoed across the cabin floor above them. Someone had returned. Voices drifted through the wooden ceiling. "I told you somebody was here. What about the basement?" "We'll check." Ryan's heart pounded. There was no back exit, only the staircase. He quietly led the women behind stacks of old crates while the puppy stayed near the stairs. The hatch creaked open. Boots descended 1 step at a time. Ryan counted silently. 1, 2, 3 men. The first carried a shotgun. The second held a flashlight. The third had a pistol tucked into his belt. "Search everything." They couldn't have gone far. The flashlight beam swept across the basement. Ryan held his breath. One more step, and they would see everyone hiding behind the crates. Suddenly, the puppy barked loudly. It sprinted across the basement toward the opposite corner. There, one of the kidnappers shouted. The dog! All three men chased after it. Grab it! The puppy slipped through a narrow opening between two broken walls. Too small for a grown man to follow. Damn it, Ryan. Didn't waste the opportunity. Move. The women rushed toward the staircase while the kidnappers were distracted. They burst out of the cabin into the afternoon sunlight. Run to the trees, Ryan shouted. Behind them came furious yelling. They're escaping. Gunshots exploded. A bullet shattered the porch railing inches from Ryan's shoulder. The women screamed and scattered into the forest. Ryan fired twice toward the cabin, forcing the kidnappers back inside. Then he looked around. His blood turned cold. The women were running. The gunmen were chasing. But Buddy hadn't come out. The tiny puppy was still trapped somewhere inside the cabin. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. The tiny German shepherd was still inside the cabin. Gunfire echoed through the trees as the kidnappers recovered from the surprise escape. Ryan counted the women running toward the forest. 1, 2, 3. Good. At least they were alive, but Buddy hadn't appeared. Keep running, Ryan shouted. The injured woman stumbled, nearly falling. Ryan rushed over, caught her by the arm, and helped her toward a cluster of thick pine trees. Stay low. He pulled out his radio again. Dispatch officer down multiple armed suspects at the old ranger cabin static. Then a broken voice came through. Ryan. Signal. Weak. I'm at the cabin. 3 victims rescued. Multiple suspects still armed. Send everyone you've got. The transmission cut out before he knew if anyone had heard. A shotgun blast erupted from the porch. Wood splintered from the tree inches above Ryan's head. They're over there, one of the kidnappers yelled. Ryan returned 2 controlled shots, forcing the gunman back behind the porch railing. Go! He shouted to the women. Don't stop until you reach the logging road! The women disappeared into the dense forest. Only then did Ryan turn back toward the cabin. Buddy. The little puppy had saved every one of them. Now Ryan couldn't leave him behind. He took a deep breath and sprinted toward the building. Bullets struck the ground behind him. He dove through the open doorway just before another shotgun blast tore through the wooden frame. The cabin was silent, too silent. Ryan moved room by room, clearing every corner with his pistol raised. Buddy, no answer. Only the distant sound of footsteps below the floor. Then, a tiny bark. It came from somewhere behind the fireplace. Ryan hurried over. The puppy's muffled barking grew louder. He examined the old stone fireplace and noticed fresh scratches on the wooden floor. One stone near the base looked different from the others. He pushed it. A hidden section of the fireplace swung inward with a grinding sound. Behind it lay a narrow passage just wide enough for one person to crawl through. So that's how you escaped, Ryan whispered. He switched on his flashlight and entered. The tunnel smelled damp and cold. Roots hung from the ceiling and muddy footprints covered the ground. Buddy barked again, closer this time. Ryan crawled another 20 feet before the tunnel widened into a small underground storage chamber. Old crates were stacked against the walls. Chains, fuel cans, boxes of fake identification cards, passports from several countries. This wasn't just a kidnapping operation. It was the headquarters of a human trafficking network. Ryan quickly photographed everything with his phone. The evidence could dismantle the entire organization. Then he heard a soft whimper. Buddy was trapped beneath a collapsed wooden shelf. The puppy struggled to free itself, but one of the heavy boards pinned its hind leg. Ryan rushed over. It's okay. I've got you. He carefully lifted the broken shelf. Buddy yelped once before pulling itself free and collapsing into Ryan's arms. Ryan quickly examined the injured leg. No visible fracture, just bruising and a shallow cut. You brave little guy. Buddy licked Ryan's hand despite shaking from exhaustion. Ryan smiled for the first time that day. You saved 3 lives. Suddenly, voices echoed from the tunnel entrance. Search underground! They couldn't have disappeared. Ryan's smile vanished. The kidnappers had discovered the secret passage. Flashlight beams flickered at the far end of the tunnel. There, someone shouted. They're inside. Ryan grabbed Buddy and looked around desperately. There was only one exit besides the tunnel. A rusted metal ladder climbed toward a square hatch in the ceiling. Ryan slung Buddy carefully inside his jacket, leaving only the puppy's head exposed. Hold on. He climbed as fast as he could. The kidnappers entered the chamber just as Ryan reached the hatch. A bullet slammed into the wall beside him. Another shattered the ladder below. Ryan shoved the hatch open with his shoulder. Fresh air flooded inside. He pulled himself onto the forest floor and immediately rolled away from the opening. Seconds later, 2 gunmen burst out behind him. Stop, Ryan didn't. He sprinted downhill, with Buddy tucked securely against his chest. The puppy suddenly began barking wildly toward the west. Ryan followed its gaze. Through the trees less than 300 yards away, he saw something impossible. A white cargo van was racing along an abandoned logging road through the small rear window. A frightened woman was pounding desperately on the glass. Ryan recognized her instantly. Emily Brooks was still alive, and the kidnappers were taking her deeper into the mountains. Ryan didn't hesitate. The instant he saw Emily pounding desperately against the rear window of the speeding white cargo van, he sprinted downhill through the trees, with Buddy tucked securely inside his jacket. Hang on, Buddy. The puppy barked once, then pushed its head out just enough to keep its eyes on the van. The abandoned logging road curved sharply through the forest. The kidnappers were gaining speed, throwing dust into the air as they headed deeper into black pine forest. Ryan knew he couldn't catch a vehicle on foot. He needed another way. As he reached the road, he spotted an old ATV parked beside a collapsed maintenance shed. The keys were still hanging in the ignition, likely left by a forestry worker. Ryan climbed on without hesitation. I'm borrowing this! The engine roared to life. He accelerated down the rough road, dodging potholes and fallen branches, while keeping the white van in sight nearly 300 yards ahead. Buddy stood with his front paws on the handlebars, barking every time the van disappeared around a bend. Easy, partner! I see it! The chase grew more dangerous by the minute. The road narrowed until steep cliffs rose on one side, while dense forest dropped away on the other. Without warning, the rear doors of the van swung open. One of the kidnappers leaned out holding a rifle. Ryan ducked instinctively. The first bullet shattered a tree trunk behind him. A second struck the ATV's front fender, sending sparks into the air. Ryan swerved sharply, but refused to slow down. The gunman fired again. This time, Buddy barked loudly just before the shot. Ryan reacted instantly, leaning to the left. The bullet missed his head by inches. You just saved me again, Ryan muttered. The gunman reloaded. Ryan saw his chance. He accelerated through a narrow gap between 2 boulders, using the rocks as temporary cover. The van disappeared around another curve. When Ryan rounded the corner seconds later, his heart sank. The road split into 2 directions. The van was gone. Ryan braked hard. Fresh tire marks covered both roads. Damn, he had only seconds to decide. Buddy jumped off the ATV and immediately lowered his nose to the ground. He sniffed both trails. Then without hesitation, he raced toward the road, climbing into the mountains. Ryan trusted him completely lead the way. He turned the ATV uphill. The climb became rougher with every mile. Large rocks forced him to slow down, but Buddy kept pointing straight ahead. Suddenly they heard engines. Not 1, 3. Ryan stopped behind a line of fallen trees. 3 black SUVs were parked near an abandoned quarry. Several armed men stood outside, unloading wooden crates from the white cargo van. Emily was pulled from the vehicle with her hands tied behind her back. She stumbled, but remained on her feet. Ryan counted quickly. 1, 2, 3, 7 armed men, far too many to attack alone. He raised his phone and zoomed in. The crates weren't filled with supplies. They contained dozens of passport stacks of cash satellite phones and sealed packages wrapped in plastic. This operation was much larger than anyone had imagined. One of the kidnappers spoke loudly enough for Ryan to hear. "The buyers arrive tonight." Another laughed. "No witnesses. No mistakes." Ryan's stomach tightened. If they moved Emily again, she might disappear forever. He quietly recorded everything on his phone. Faces, vehicles, license plates. Every second of footage could become critical evidence. Just then, Buddy began growling. Not toward the criminals, toward the quarry itself. Ryan followed the puppy's gaze. Near the edge of the clearing stood a weathered concrete building that had once served as the quarry office. Its windows were broken, but one curtain moved slightly. Someone was inside. Buddy tugged gently at Ryan's sleeve. "You think there are more people?" The puppy whined softly. Ryan studied the building through his binoculars. For a split second, a frightened face appeared behind the cracked glass. Then another, and another. At least 5 captives. The trafficking ring wasn't holding only Emily. They had imprisoned several victims inside the abandoned office. Ryan exhaled slowly. 1 officer, 1 injured puppy, 7 armed traffickers, and multiple innocent lives depending on his next decision. He reached for his radio once more. This time, a clear signal finally came through. "Ryan, this is Detective Collins. We've traced your location." Relief washed over him. "Sarah, listen carefully." He kept his voice barely above a whisper. "I've found their main camp." There was a brief silence. Then she asked the question Ryan had been dreading. "How many suspects?" Ryan looked across the quarry one last time. "They're preparing to move the hostages." He tightened his grip on the radio. "And I don't think we have enough time to wait for backup." Ryan lowered the radio and kept his eyes fixed on the quarry below. 7 armed traffickers. At least 6 hostages. Emily was tied near the white cargo van, while the other captives remained locked inside the abandoned quarry office. Every minute they waited increased the chance that everyone would disappear. Detective Sarah Collins' voice crackled through the radio. "Ryan, our tactical team is still 20 minutes away. Stay hidden. Do not engage." Ryan glanced at Buddy. The little German shepherd stared toward the office building, whining softly. 20 minutes. They didn't have 20 minutes. One of the traffickers shouted. "Move them. The buyers will be here soon." Ryan watched 2 men drag Emily toward the office. Another unlocked the front door, while the remaining gunmen spread out around the quarry checking the perimeter. He whispered into the radio. "They're moving the hostages." "I know," Sarah replied. "But if you go in alone, you'll get yourself killed." Ryan stayed silent. She wasn't wrong. Charging into the camp would be suicide. He needed another plan. Buddy suddenly nudged Ryan's hand with his nose. "What is it?" The puppy looked toward a narrow drainage ditch running behind the quarry office. The ditch disappeared beneath the building through a large concrete pipe. Ryan raised his binoculars again. The opening was barely 3 feet high. Too small for a vehicle, but large enough for a person to crawl through. More importantly, no guards were watching it. Ryan smiled faintly. Good catch. He keyed the radio again. "Sarah, there's a drainage tunnel leading under the office." "Ryan, I'm not attacking them. What are you doing? I'm getting the hostages out." Before Sarah could argue, Ryan switched off the radio. He removed his body armor and utility belt, leaving only his pistol flashlight handcuffs and spare magazine. The lighter he traveled, the faster he could crawl. He gently scratched Buddy behind the ears. "I need you to stay close." The puppy wagged its tail once. Together they slipped through the trees until they reached the drainage pipe. Cold water trickled beneath them as they crawled into the darkness. The tunnel echoed with distant voices from above. Ryan switched off his flashlight. Only a faint beam of daylight marked the far end. After nearly 50 feet, the pipe opened into a concrete maintenance room beneath the quarry office. Ryan climbed through carefully. Dust covered everything. Old electrical panels lined one wall. Rusted pipes crossed the ceiling. Buddy sniffed the air. Then he quietly padded toward a wooden staircase. Ryan followed. Halfway up the stairs, he heard voices. They leave in 10 minutes. What about the woman who recorded us? The boss wants her alive until the exchange. Emily. Ryan slowly peeked through a crack in the floorboards. The office above had been converted into a holding room. Emily sat against one wall with her hands tied. 5 other frightened women sat beside her. Only one armed guard remained inside. The others had gone outside to prepare the convoy. Ryan waited. The guard checked his watch. Then his radio buzzed. "I'll be outside." He locked the door behind him. The room fell silent. Ryan counted to 5 before pushing open the hidden hatch beneath the staircase. Emily gasped. Ryan quickly placed a finger over his lips. "It's okay. I'm Officer Ryan Carter." He cut Emily's restraints first. She rubbed her wrists, fighting back tears. "I knew Buddy would find someone." Ryan smiled. He never gave up. Emily knelt and hugged the puppy tightly. Buddy licked her face excitedly, his tail wagging nonstop despite his injured leg. For a brief moment, everyone forgot the danger surrounding them. Then Ryan handed Emily a small folding knife. "Can you free the others?" She nodded immediately. Within seconds, every captive was untied. Ryan pointed toward the hidden hatch. "There's a drainage tunnel underneath this building. Stay low. Follow Buddy." Emily looked at him. "What about you?" Ryan checked the hallway through the cracked door. "I'll buy you enough time." Emily grabbed his arm. "There are more men outside than you think. I counted 7. She shook her head. "No, there are 10. Ryan's expression changed instantly. 3 more. The situation had just become far worse. Before he could respond, an engine echoed outside. Several doors slammed. Then a familiar voice shouted from the yard. "Check the prisoners." Ryan looked at Emily. "They know something's wrong." The doorknob began turning. Someone was unlocking the room. Ryan raised his pistol. Emily gathered the other women near the hidden hatch. Buddy stood between Ryan and the door, growling quietly. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and the first trafficker stepped inside, staring directly at the empty restraints lying on the floor. The trafficker froze in the doorway. His eyes dropped to the empty zip ties scattered across the floor. What the Ryan reacted first. He lunged forward, driving his shoulder into the man's chest before he could raise his rifle. The impact slammed both of them into the hallway wall. The weapons skidded across the wooden floor. Ryan shouted. Emily didn't hesitate. "Everyone follow Buddy." The puppy barked and sprinted toward the hidden hatch beneath the staircase. One by one, the frightened women disappeared into the drainage tunnel, while Emily stayed behind just long enough to make sure no one was left behind. The trafficker swung a heavy punch at Ryan's face. Ryan ducked and countered with an elbow to the man's jaw. The trafficker stumbled backward, but before Ryan could handcuff him, 2 more armed men rushed through the front entrance. "There he is." Gunfire exploded through the office. Ryan dove behind a concrete support column as bullets ripped through the walls. "Get the hostages!" one man yelled. Another shouted, "Kill the cop!" Ryan fired 2 quick shots. One shattered a window beside the gunmen, forcing them to scatter for cover. He grabbed the fallen rifle, checked the magazine, and moved toward the hallway. Outside engines roared to life. The traffickers were preparing to escape. Ryan knew he couldn't let them leave with the evidence, or with Emily if they caught her again. His radio suddenly crackled. "Ryan, this is Collins." "I'm inside the quarry office," he replied between breaths. "We're 5 minutes out. I don't think they'll wait 5 minutes." A burst of automatic fire interrupted the transmission. The radio fell silent again. Ryan glanced toward the hidden hatch. Everyone should have reached the tunnel by now. He pulled a smoke grenade from an emergency pouch on his belt, yanked the pin, and rolled it into the hallway. Within seconds, thick gray smoke filled the building. The traffickers began coughing. "I can't see him." Ryan used the confusion to slip outside through a side door. The quarry erupted into chaos. 3 SUVs had already started their engines. The white cargo van was turning toward the exit road. Several traffickers were loading crates into the vehicles while shouting conflicting orders. The prisoners escaped. Find the dog. Forget the dog. Move Ryan took cover behind a stack of concrete pipes. He aimed carefully and fired at the front tire of the cargo van. Bang. The tire exploded. The driver lost control and the van slammed sideways into a parked SUV blocking the only road leading out of the quarry. For a moment, every vehicle was trapped. One of the traffickers pointed directly at Ryan. There, all remaining gunmen opened fire. Concrete fragments sprayed into the air around him. Ryan crawled behind a bulldozer, narrowly avoiding another volley of bullets. Then he heard Buddy bark. The puppy wasn't in the tunnel. Ryan looked up in disbelief. Buddy had climbed onto a pile of gravel overlooking the quarry. He barked repeatedly, drawing every trafficker's attention toward himself. No, Ryan shouted. The criminals instinctively turned their weapons toward the tiny German shepherd. Before anyone could fire, Buddy darted down the opposite side of the gravel mound. Half the traffickers chased after him. It was exactly the distraction Ryan needed. He sprinted toward the nearest SUV and pulled the keys from the ignition before throwing them deep into the forest. The second SUV's driver tried to reverse, but the blocked road left nowhere to go. At that exact moment, sirens echoed through black pine forest. One, then three, then dozens. Blue and red lights flashed between the trees as police cruisers, sheriff's deputies, and armored tactical vehicles burst into the quarry from every direction. Loudspeaker, drop your weapons, police. You're surrounded. The traffickers froze. Some reached for their guns. Others immediately raised their hands. Detective Sarah Collins stepped from the lead armored vehicle wearing tactical gear. She pointed her rifle toward the suspects. It's over. One desperate trafficker ignored the warning. He grabbed Emily, who had just emerged from the drainage tunnel, and pressed a pistol against her head. Nobody moves. The entire quarry fell silent. Ryan slowly lowered his weapon. 20 officers surrounded the gunman, yet no one had a clear shot. Emily stood trembling, unable to escape. Then, from somewhere behind the terrified trafficker, Buddy silently appeared. The entire quarry stood frozen. Emily trembled as the trafficker pressed the pistol against her head. "Back away," he shouted, "or she dies." No officer moved. Ryan slowly lowered his weapon, searching for an opening. Detective Sarah Collins kept her voice calm. "Think about this. You're surrounded. Don't make it worse." The trafficker laughed nervously. "I've got nothing left to lose." Behind him, unnoticed by anyone except Ryan Buddy, emerged from behind a stack of broken concrete. The little German shepherd limped slightly, but his eyes never left Emily. Ryan understood immediately. Buddy wasn't charging. He was waiting. Very slowly, Ryan took a single step to the left. The trafficker followed him, with the pistol shifting his balance for just a second. It was all Buddy needed. The puppy burst forward. He didn't attack the man's arm or chest. Instead, Buddy clamped onto the cuff of the trafficker's pants and pulled with all his strength. The sudden tug made the man lose his footing. Emily instinctively ducked. Ryan reacted instantly. He lunged forward, knocking the pistol from the man's hand before pinning him to the ground. "Police, don't move." Within seconds, tactical officers rushed in and secured the final suspect. The quarry fell silent. It was over. Emily dropped to her knees and wrapped both arms around Buddy. Tears streamed down her face as the exhausted puppy licked her cheek. "You found help," she whispered. "I knew you would." Ryan smiled quietly. No one else would have made it this far. Over the next several hours, investigators searched every building and vehicle in the quarry. They recovered stolen passports, forged identification documents, cache weapons to computers, and detailed records connecting the trafficking ring to multiple disappearances across several states. The rescued women were safely transported to a nearby hospital where doctors confirmed they would recover. Several families who had spent months searching for missing daughters finally received the phone calls they had been praying for. Detective Collins approached Ryan as evidence teams continued their work. "You were right." Ryan looked up. "This wasn't just a kidnapping." She nodded. We've already identified members of the organization operating in 3 different states. Because of the evidence you found, federal investigators can now dismantle the entire network. Ryan shook his head. I didn't find it. He looked toward Buddy. He did. A week later, the town of Pine Creek gathered in front of the police department. Residents, reporters, firefighters, deputies, and dozens of local families filled the square. Emily stood in the front row with Buddy sitting proudly beside her, his injured leg now wrapped in a clean bandage. Police Chief Harrison stepped to the podium. Today we recognize extraordinary courage. He turned toward Buddy. This young German Shepherd refused to abandon his owner, led Officer Ryan Carter through miles of forest, uncovered crucial evidence, and helped save multiple innocent lives. The crowd erupted into applause. The chief placed a custom blue service collar around Buddy's neck. Attached to it hung a silver medal engraved with 4 simple words, Black Pine Hero. Buddy wagged his tail as children clapped and laughed. Emily knelt beside him, gently scratching behind his ears. You earned every bit of this. Ryan stepped forward for a photograph, resting one hand on Buddy's head. The cameras flashed, capturing a moment neither of them would ever forget. Months later, Black Pine Forest looked peaceful once again. The abandoned quarry had been closed permanently, and the old cabin had become part of an active crime scene used to train investigators. Ryan returned to his normal patrol duties. Emily resumed her life, grateful for a second chance, but every Saturday morning, she and Buddy stopped by the police station with coffee and homemade cookies for the officers. Buddy always ran straight to Ryan, first tail, wagging furiously. Ryan knelt to greet his smallest partner. You still checking on me? Buddy answered with a happy bark. Ryan smiled. Good. As Emily clipped Buddy's leash back on, she looked at Ryan. Thank you for believing him. Ryan watched the little German shepherd proudly walking beside the woman he had refused to leave behind. Then he quietly replied, I didn't save Buddy. He paused, smiling, as they disappeared down the sidewalk. Buddy saved all of us.